Friends, I want to tell you about an engineer living in San Francisco. He earns $450,000 a year, leases a Mercedes, sends his kids to private school, dines at luxury venues almost every evening, and pays a monthly mortgage of $5,500. He looks wealthy, but in reality, he can't come up with $3,000 without selling something or going into debt. What I'm telling you is not a fantasy, dear friends. According to Goldman Sachs's 2025 report, 41% of those earning between $250,000 and $500,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck, and 40% of those earning over $500,000 say the same thing. Pay attention to this. 4 out of every 10 people earning $500,000 a year don't feel secure. High income doesn't solve financial problems. That's exactly why I want to talk to you about this today. People who earn more spend more, nothing is left to save, and years later they wake up at 55 wondering where all that money they earned went. Research reveals something extremely interesting, friends. Those earning $150,000 a year report running out of money before the next paycheck at a higher rate compared to those earning $75,000. 48% of those earning $150,000 and above feel this way, and 36% of those earning over $200,000. So, how does this happen? Because the trap operates on psychology, not arithmetic. When income increases, spending increases in direct proportion. We call this lifestyle inflation, and it happens so gradually that most people don't even notice. The $15 lunch turns into a $35 lunch, the Toyota goes and a Mercedes arrives, and the already adequate home turns into a house where even the guest room goes unused. Expenses grow, but income stays fixed. Research on actual millionaires reveals a completely different picture, dear friends. The classic study called The Millionaire Next Door reveals that real millionaires don't look like millionaires at all. They live in ordinary neighborhoods, drive old cars, and rarely display their wealth. According to Ramsey Solutions research, 94% of millionaires still live in middle-class or modest neighborhoods. The 2025 Empower study shows that 62% of everyday millionaires still budget, look for deals, and avoid extravagant lifestyles even after crossing the $1 million threshold. A typical millionaire has never spent more than $400 on a single clothing item. 60% live in homes worth under $500,000. Warren Buffett still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. Here lies the fascinating paradox. People who truly accumulate wealth look nothing like people who appear wealthy. The doctor driving a leased Mercedes looks far wealthier than the carpenter driving a 10-year-old truck, but holding $2 million in investments. The authors of The Millionaire Next Door define 2 great categories: prodigious accumulators of wealth and those who cannot accumulate wealth. A plumber earning $50,000 a year can accumulate far more wealth than a software engineer earning $700,000 a year, because the category is determined not by income but by spending habits. You can apply this formula, friends. Multiply your age by your annual gross income and divide by 10. That number represents your expected net worth. For someone earning $250,000 at age 50, that figure is approximately $1.25 million. Those falling below this threshold are spending their income rather than building wealth, and unfortunately, most high earners fail this test dramatically. Charles Schwab's 2025 Modern Wealth Survey reveals that Americans believe they need $2.3 million to be considered wealthy. They even think they need $839,000 just to feel financially comfortable. On the other hand, the average net worth of American households is approximately $193,000. The gap between what people impulsively acquire and what they actually have is enormous. This is exactly where psychology kicks in, friends. If you earn $500,000 but have a net worth of $400,000, you don't feel wealthy, you feel behind. Those who continue pleasure-driven spending never feel like their money is enough no matter how much they earn. 63% of respondents in Schwab's survey say they feel it takes more money to be wealthy compared to last year. Goals keep shifting. Someone reaches a net worth of $500,000 and finds that comfort now requires $850,000. They reach 1 million but think that wealth now means 2.5 million. No amount ever feels like enough because contentment is never achieved. Spending patterns reveal how the trap operates in real life, dear friends. In 2025, those earning $100,000 and above had an average credit card balance of $12,760. The top 20% of earners hold 35% of total U.S. credit card debt, despite representing a small slice of the population. This seems contradictory until you understand that credit operates differently at higher income levels. Lower-income households use credit to survive because cash runs out before the month does. Higher-income households use credit to maintain their standard of living, financing a lifestyle that technically fits their income but leaves no margin for error. Both end up in the same place, in debt to someone else with interest accruing. According to Fed data, total U.S. credit card debt reached $1.277 trillion in the fourth quarter of 2025, the highest figure recorded since 1999 and a 66% increase from the pandemic lows. According to Bankrate's 2025 research, 36% of those earning $100,000 and above carry a credit card balance from month to month. That's not the near zero percentage you'd expect from people earning top-tier salaries. The fixed cost trap is particularly dangerous for high-income households, friends. When you earn $60,000, your housing cost is constrained by what landlords will approve. When you earn $400,000, you qualify for mortgages that stretch your budget just as thin but involve much larger numbers. A family earning $90,000 might spend $2,500 monthly on housing. A family earning $400,000 might spend $8,500. Both families spend roughly the same percentage of their income on housing. Both families feel equally constrained. The higher-income family has more expensive problems, but the same fundamental lack of flexibility. Private tuition fees, multiple car payments, mountain house renovation costs, club memberships. These don't seem like extravagant expenses in the traditional sense. They are lifestyle commitments that function like fixed costs once established. Pulling a child out of private school feels impossible. Selling the mountain house feels like failure. Downgrading the car model feels like a public admission that things aren't going well. The trap works exactly this way because lowering your standard of living feels extremely difficult. The savings rate tells the whole story, dear friends. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the U.S. personal savings rate stood at 3.6% in December 2025. Americans are saving approximately $3.6 out of every $100 of disposable income. At the pandemic peak in April 2020, this rate reached 33.8%. Stimulus checks arrived, spending opportunities disappeared, and Americans accidentally experienced what aggressive saving felt like. That money is gone now. This pattern holds across all income levels, and that is the critical insight. Higher earners save a little more in absolute terms, but their savings rates often remain equally low because their spending also grows alongside their income. When compared to the behavior of actual wealth accumulators, the difference is striking. The Millionaire Next Door research finds that millionaires typically invest at least 15% of their annual income before paying for necessities. They pay themselves first and treat saving as mandatory rather than optional. The difference between 4% and 15% compounds dramatically over time. Social comparison accelerates the trap, friends. Lifestyle creep has always existed. What has changed is visibility. Social media puts everyone's vacations, renovations, and purchases on display in real time. Goldman Sachs's 2025 report explicitly cites keeping up with the Joneses as a driver of paycheck-to-paycheck living among high earners. Six-figure earners feel the pressure to race with their peers' spending even when their budget doesn't support it. This creates a bizarre dynamic where people earning top 5% incomes feel financially inadequate because they're comparing themselves to the top 1%, or to carefully curated social media versions of people who might be even more leveraged than they are. Unnecessary spending data reveals where the money actually goes. According to Empower data, food delivery spending increased 10.2% year over year from $162.40 to $179. Streaming service spending grew 12.5%. These are convenience categories. Each individual expense is small: pizza chains, delivery apps, subscription services. But $150 monthly on food delivery is $1,800 annually. Add cable streaming, ride shares, subscription boxes, and premium apps, and the total reaches a significant amount of money evaporating without producing lasting value. The high-income version involves larger numbers but the same reasons: first class instead of economy, hotels instead of Airbnb, luxury, restaurants instead of cooking at home. Each upgrade feels minor, but they compound into a lifestyle that requires the full income to sustain. Research shows that millionaires spend differently, dear friends. About 44% spend more on experiences than luxury goods, but they are selective about which experiences matter. They spend on what they value and cut ruthlessly everywhere else. This selective frugality distinguishes actual wealth builders from high earners caught in the trap. The regional dimension adds another layer, friends. In Schwab's survey, San Francisco residents said they need $4.4 million to be considered wealthy. Southern Californians said $3.4 million, New Yorkers said $2.9 million. Living in high-cost areas inflates both expenses and expectations simultaneously. A $300,000 income in Kansas City provides a dramatically different lifestyle than the same income in Manhattan or San Francisco. Someone earning $350,000 in New York might genuinely feel financially constrained because housing costs, taxes, and baseline expenses consume a larger portion of their income. They earn high salaries but have very high expenses, which often cancels out the income advantage. The contrast with actual millionaires is striking. Research consistently shows that 79% of millionaires are self-made, receiving no inheritance. Only 31% averaged $100,000 or more annually over their careers. Many built wealth on modest incomes through consistent behavior over long periods. 73% of millionaires never carried a credit card balance. They understood that compound interest works against you and chose to stay on the right side of that equation. The average millionaire worked, saved, and invested for 25 years before crossing the $1 million threshold. Most other people didn't get there until around age 49. The path was not dramatic and sudden, it was gradual and boring. This timeline matters because it shows what the high earners spending to avoid looking poor actually costs. Someone who earns $300,000 a year for 15 years and saves nothing has lost. Saving years that can never be recovered. The escape route exists but requires uncomfortable choices, dear friends. Breaking the high-income poverty trap requires confronting a question most people avoid. What is all this spending actually for? A doctor earning $400,000 could save $100,000 a year. They earn enough. They just spend enough to prevent it. Choosing differently means accepting that the Mercedes can be a Toyota, choosing a public school, going to a restaurant once every 2 months, moving to a more modest home. These sound like I'm judging you, but they are actually very important trade-offs. The high-income poverty trap is not about deprivation, it is about intention. Most people trapped in it never consciously chose their spending patterns. Each decision seemed reasonable in isolation, gradually accumulating expenses until all their money was tied up. Reversing the pattern requires auditing every recurring expense and questioning whether it delivers value proportional to its cost. Most often the answer is no. Subscriptions go unused, square footage goes unoccupied, vehicles go underdriven. Memberships provide status more than utility. Self-control is essential in every spending decision. Saving what is left over doesn't work. Spending what is left after saving in a controlled way does. Someone earning $400,000 a year who automatically sets aside $120,000 for investments will accumulate significant wealth regardless of how they spend the remaining $280,000. They will still live well. just a little less well than someone earning the same amount and saving nothing. The difference between these two people compounds dramatically over time. After 20 years of consistent investing, the saver will have built generational wealth, while the spender has lifestyle memories and minimal assets. The math is clear. If you earn $400,000 and save 40%, you accumulate $160,000 a year before investment returns. If you earn $300,000 and save 5%, you accumulate $15,000 a year. That is the 20-year cost of the high-income poverty trap. The high-income poverty trap persists because people optimize for the wrong variable. Optimizing for lifestyle means maximizing current consumption at the expense of future flexibility. Optimizing for wealth means accepting current constraint in exchange for future options. Neither approach is inherently wrong, but only one leads to the financial security that high earners assume their income should automatically provide. Someone earning $300,000 with a 25% savings rate builds wealth faster than someone earning $500,000 with a 5% savings rate. The math isn't complicated, the behavior is. 77% of Americans don't feel financially comfortable regardless of what they earn. 40% of those making $500,000 live paycheck to paycheck. Total credit card debt hit all-time highs while incomes remained near record levels. The evidence is very clear, dear friends. Income alone doesn't solve financial problems. Only behavioral patterns regarding how much of income to save rather than spend can make a difference. Saving and making conscious choices creates security. The trap is real. Avoiding it is possible. It requires identifying necessities, sticking to them, and accepting modest living conditions. Whether you save or spend, how you manage your money is always the only determining factor. Take good care of yourselves, dear friends.